It's been talked about so many times. It's one of the classic topics when dealing with the long history and historiography of World War I Wien Chai. It's one of the events that is considered, if not a turning point, at least of extremely high historical and even critical significance. We're talking about the assassination attempt of July 20, 1944, the so-called Operation Valkyrie. A successful movie was even made about it with Tom Cruise a few years ago, although the film had several errors and screenplay adaptations due to cinematic needs, which, here and there, kept the sense of the story intact, the so-called Operation Valkyrie. He is widely regarded as the central figure of the July 20th, 1944 plot. Klaus Maria Philipp Schenk, Count von Stauffenberg, Count von Stauffenberg. This colonel, rather young, was just 36 years old with obvious disabilities. He was missing an eye, had lost his right hand and 2 fingers on his left hand. These last disabilities were the most severe. For him, who before the war enjoyed writing and was a great lover of culture, after being saved by doctors following the strafing he suffered in Tunisia, von Stauffenberg had learned to handle explosives much faster than to start writing again with his left hand, which was not his natural hand. But von Stauffenberg was not alone, as we know. We've seen this not just from the so-called People's Trials, which claimed about 5,000 lives. Even though the core of that plot did not reach 100 people, von Stauffenberg had behind him what was known as the Schwarze Kapelle, the Black Orchestra. Not in the Nazi sense, clearly. It was an assembly of soldiers, police officers, but also politicians and diplomats who had really had enough of Nazism, who simply couldn't take it anymore. Before von Stauffenberg, there was Major General Henning von Treitschko, a resolute man, but not exactly a man of action, even though he had often put himself on the front line to attempt on the Führer's life. Von Treitschko was a technician, a tactician, and he had taken advantage, or at least he thought he was taking advantage, in the best possible way. An unusual gift arrived from 2 other officers who openly sympathized with the cause of the Schwarze Kapelle. That is, Admiral Wilhelm Canaris and Brigadier General Hans Holster, respectively the head and deputy head of the Abwehr, military intelligence. Yes, German military intelligence at that time, at least the armies, was dominated by anti-Nazi officers who were in constant conflict with the SS intelligence service, led by Walter Schellenberg, author of the Mello kidnapping we previously discussed. Well, it happened that at the beginning of 1943, the Abwehr seized a new type of device, a plastic explosive, from 2 captured British agents, a mixture called Nobel 808 in the form of tiles, to be activated through what would become known as English pencils. Just imagine, small copper cylinders. Inside, there was a spring-loaded striker held in place and a small acid capsule above it. By squeezing the acid capsule with pliers, this would corrode the spring wire until it released the striker, which, if inserted into the plastic explosive tile, would cause the detonation. A device that today we could call rudimentary, considering everything that has happened in the field of weaponry and explosives, featuring remarkable technological advances that were truly innovative for the time. Well, von Treitschko had used that innovation for the first time in March 1943 when Hitler visited Smolensk at the headquarters of the Army Group Center. The Army Group Center, where von Treitschko served as Chief of Staff within the Second Army, he had prepared those bombs well. Von Treitschko had placed them in a wooden box with Cointreau labels, the famous French liqueur, and he had asked Lieutenant Colonel Brandt from Hitler's entourage to take that box back to Germany with him, to pay a sort of debt of honor. With General Helmut Stief, director of the Oberkommando Becher. Obviously, it was an excuse, but the bomb hadn't worked, and in a hurry, Von Treschow had to return to Berlin to retrieve the bomb before someone discovered the truth. Why didn't it work? It was said that the altitude combined with the extremely cold temperature in Hitler's plane's cargo hold had jammed the firing pin, despite the corrosive action of the acid. That had been one of Hitler's many so-called strokes of luck. How many times had he escaped assassination attempts? It had already happened back then, Berger Breuscheler, when, years earlier, a lone attacker had tried to blow up the beer hall. Cradle of Nazism in Munich on the very night when Hitler was supposed to give a speech there on the anniversary of the failed Munich Putsch. But that night, at the last moment, Hitler had left. And then there were the cases of explosive backpacks that didn't detonate, and the coat stuffed with explosives that a colonel was supposed to wear for a suicide mission during an exhibition of captured Soviet weaponry. That one also failed, aborted, because Hitler had decided to leave the exhibition earlier than planned. And the colonel had to rush out to defuse the bomb so he wouldn't blow himself up. And then the attempts at ambush with gunshots and cyanide vials all failed. Even the bombs in the airplane engines hadn't worked. It almost seemed like Hitler was protected by something or someone superior, for those who want to believe it. Well, when von Treschow has to hand over to von Stauffenberg the role of military commander of the operation to kill Hitler because he was called back to the Eastern Front, von Stauffenberg comes up with a new plan. He understands that it is necessary to use all the measures that Nazism has adopted over time to strike Nazism itself, to kill it with its own weapons. There is a plan called Valkyrie. It's a plan designed to bring in the reserves, the territorial army, the Ersatz, the replacements, in the event of a revolt by the many foreign workers enslaved and brought to Germany to work in the factories. The Nazis are not stupid. They know that the workers reduced to slavery could eventually rebel. So they prepared this intervention plan. Well, Stauffenberg thinks that, first of all, this plan could be the ideal basis for gaining the loyalty of the troops and unintentionally pushing them to overthrow the regime. And Stauffenberg's second thought is to exclude, precisely from this perspective, the Waffen-SS and the SS from Valkyrie. This is because, as others have suggested to him, it's not enough to just kill Hitler. The entire regime must be dismantled, starting with the repressive machine, starting with the protection section. From those men in black uniforms with silver lightning bolts, they are the enemy and must not be kept in power. With one exception, but it's a particular exception, and that's Arthur Neby. He is the director of the criminal police, which by Himmler's will was included in the Reich years earlier. Sicherheit 80 wearing SS uniforms. Neby is a special case. Despite the uniform, he joined the Schwarzkapelle and he will pay the price for it. Then there are many other soldiers as well. It's not just von Treschow, nor his powerful uncle Fedor von Bock. Field Marshal, there's also von Stuttnagel, the military governor of France, another prominent figure in the army. There's Baron von Moltke, who is a descendant of a very well-known and influential Prussian family. Then there's a mythological name, that of Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, who is not directly part of the plot, but is aware of it, and he let the conspirators know that he was not opposed to a change in political regime. It's clear that Rommel couldn't intervene during those days. After the Normandy landings, after some paratroopers even landed in the courtyard of his headquarters at the Castle of La Roche, Guillaume Rommel is engaged in containing the liberating invasion of Europe by the Allies, and not long before he too had suffered an aerial strafing. He's at home recovering, so he can't act or do anything, but it doesn't matter. Von Stauffenberg's plan is to take Berlin, and from Berlin, send out orders to all the districts that make up the German Reich, including the occupied territories. In every district, the SS, both Waffen and regular, must be disarmed, power must be seized, the most dangerous elements must be imprisoned, and a new state must be proclaimed. With him, there are other individuals with proven political experience. There is Field Marshal Ludwig Beck, who resigned years earlier. There is another field marshal, von Witzleben, who according to the plans should be the new head of the army. There is the former Gauleiter of Leipzig, Karl Goerder, who however had to step aside. Himmler became suspicious and issued an arrest warrant for him. Ulrich von Hassel, a former diplomat and ex-ambassador to Italy, had a daughter who married Italian nobleman Pirzio Biroli. And then there are many other people. We've already talked about Canaris and Oster. There is also the chief of Berlin's Orpo, the Ordnungspolizei. Count von Eldor guarantees that his men will help those of von Stauffenberg to maintain public order during the most delicate period. The intervention plan must be implemented as soon as possible. Von Stauffenberg himself goes to see Hitler at the Berghof in the Alps, on the border between Bavaria and Salzburg, to have him sign the changes to Valkyrie. Hitler doesn't read the changes. He trusts, signs, and sends the officer home. By mid-July, the plan is ready. The plan calls for von Stauffenberg to go, thanks to his role as chief of staff.
At the
Wolfschanze, the Wolf's Lair, that complex of bunkers in East Prussia, where Hitler feels at ease. From where the dictator moves his armies, real or just on paper. Also because by now the war is going very badly for Nazi Germany. Von Stauffenberg, once he arrives at the Wolfschanze, will have to set the trigger in motion, that is, arm those 2 plastic explosives and place them in the meeting room, which is a bunker. Make an excuse like a phone call, then return to Berlin right away. Meanwhile, his accomplice, General Erich Felgebel, in charge of telecommunications, will disconnect the entire telephone system at the Wolfschanze. He will isolate it from the world, giving von Stauffenberg time to fly back to Berlin. In the meantime, in Berlin, the ersatz air should already be in motion. They should have already carried out the arrests and detentions, closed the party headquarters, shut down the SS headquarters, and taken power. This is the planned operation. It's a very complex plan that involves a series of actions that must be carried out with precision and punctuality. We would say Swiss-like. Obviously, we need the approval of a devious character who so far has never given any clear signals. This person is General Erich Fromm, the head of the Ersatzer, the head of the territorial army. He is the one who has to sign the mobilization. But so far, he has always ignored it and played both sides. He has informed himself and is fully aware of von Stauffenberg's and the others' plan. Also because there are other conspirators in his office, like General Wolbrich or Lieutenant Colonel Mertz. Von Kirchheim, however, has always called himself a loyal Nazi. There is no time to hesitate. A first attempt to assassinate Hitler at Rastenburg at the Wolf's Lair fails due to a simple timing issue. The meeting ends early, and von Stauffenberg doesn't have time to activate the Valkyrie plan. A second meeting is called for July 20, 1944. Von Stauffenberg arrives just before lunchtime. With an excuse, he asks to withdraw to a room because he says he needs to change the collar inserts of his shirt. It's very hot. He's particularly sweaty and needs to freshen up. He doesn't want to appear before the Führer smelling of sweat.
In short,
Von Stauffenberg takes a moment aside with his aide, Lieutenant von Eften. He changes his collar liner.
Uniform and
manages to arm
only one
plastic tile. He can't arm the second one. Because in the meantime, from outside, they're asking him to hurry up because the meeting is about to start. Not only is Benito Mussolini also supposed to arrive in Minuti by train from Italy, but maybe he will also take part in the meeting. Himmler won't be there, Goebbels won't be there, but the goal is to strike at Hitler. There's another update. Because of the heat, Hitler has decided not to use the usual bunker. He would suffocate in there, so he prefers the Lagerbracke, a wooden prefab that's being adapted as a meeting room. It's clear that this is a problem because while a reinforced concrete bunker provides a particularly strong concussive effect from an explosive inside, the same can't be said here. A wooden structure, however, would spread the energy outward. This is a serious issue. But von Stauffenberg is already involved and decides to proceed. He places the explosive inside the bag and puts the bag under the meeting table near one of the table legs, as close to Hitler as possible. The excuse he uses to get closer and closer to the dictator is that he's not just missing one eye and 7 out of 10 fingers on his hands. He has hearing damage. Von Stauffenberg struggles to hear, and distance increases the risk of not hearing anything. With this excuse, he's able to get closer, put down the briefcase, and then leave. Another excuse is that he has an important phone call directly from Berlin. Stauffenberg leaves, contacts Feldgiebel, and tells him that the explosion will happen soon. After that, he doesn't make any other phone calls. He leaves for the Lager Barrack at a normal pace. Almost no one noticed his absence. Meanwhile, the meeting continues at the Lager Barrack. They are talking about the situation of the armies in the Lake Peipus area. They have to face yet another offensive from the Red Army. The speaker is saying that if a retreat is not carried out quickly, the situation at Lake Peipus will become a real catastrophe. He can't finish the sentence. A powerful explosion interrupts the speech and sends almost everyone in the room flying in all directions. Some people even fly out the windows while the roof blows off. Von Stauffenberg watches the scene from a distance. He calls his aide, they get in the car, and he orders the driver to leave at full speed. On the way to the airport, they get rid of the second unexploded bomb, and when they reach the checkpoint barrier, they manage to get it opened with a trick, without the guards being able to contact the wolf's lair. The problem is that no one in Berlin has taken the initiative. Word of the attack has reached Berlin. It is known that von Stauffenberg has struck, but Fromm does not act, and Ulbricht initially hesitates. He is not sure. He wants recommendations. He wants reassurances that the plan really went well. He wants Stauffenberg himself to guarantee that Hitler is dead. Doing this wastes many valuable hours. When Stauffenberg lands in Berlin, he discovers that Valkyrie has not been carried out. He goes into a rage and immediately calls the Blender Block, the complex of buildings inside which is the Oberkommando. And he orders Ulbricht, who is actually his superior, to carry out Valkyrie, even if it means arresting General Fromm Ulbricht. He is eventually convinced, signs the orders, arrests Fromm, who refuses to participate, and issues the orders for Marchiglia. Orders that are redistributed are sent to various districts in Germany, but also to the Republic of Czechoslovakia, or rather, what remains of the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia, to Paris, to Milan, to Warsaw. Wherever there are German troops, orders say a coup is underway. The SS have killed Hitler, capture all the SS, place them under arrest, along with the party members. The new head of state is General Beck, the new chancellor is Karl Gödel, the new head of the army is von Witzleben. You only have to answer to them. At first, the coup succeeds. It succeeds because orders come solely and exclusively from the Blender Block. And everyone trusts von Stauffenberg and Beck, who steps in whenever there's a hitch. On the streets, the Ordnungspolizei of Count von Eldorf, but also the reserve troops, the Wachbataillon Groß Deutschland, set up checkpoints, also call for reinforcements of armored troops, and maintain order. There are almost no clashes, but something does happen, as there are a few dead at the police station. Lieutenant Colonel Brandt himself, the one who escaped the bomb. In the control box, a stenographer, a few other officers. Then there are several bruised, some seriously injured, like Admiral von Puttkamer. But Hitler is basically alive. He suffered abrasions on his arm. He's dazed from the explosion. In fact, his finger is quite limited, at least for the first few days. But he's alive. He's not dead. He restores control in just a few hours. Hours that are needed to arrest Feldgiebel, restore communications, and send arrest orders to Berlin for all the participants in the coup, von Stauffenberg and others. The one who unlocks the situation is the Minister of Propaganda, Goebbels. We already talked about him not long ago. Goebbels receives Major Otto Remmer, commander of the Groß Deutschland Battalion, the Guard Battalion, at his residence. Here, he was ordered to arrest the Reich Minister of Propaganda. Well, Goebbels manages to have Major Remmer speak on the phone with Hitler, who guarantees his loyalty. And from that moment on, everything changes. Everything changes because in the various branches of the German army's organizational machine, the orders coming from the Bendler Block from von Stauffenberg are ignored or blocked. and the orders coming from the wolf's lair are carried out by evening. By now it's clear that the coup group has failed. It failed maybe because of the delay, maybe because of an underestimation, definitely because Hitler is not dead. When Major Reimer's soldiers, together with other units, take the Brander block, almost without resistance, they capture all the officers present. Ludwig Beck requests a pistol to commit suicide, and his request is granted. Beck tries twice, wounds himself, and is then shot dead by a sergeant. In the same way, in France, General von Stulpnagel will also try to shoot himself, but will only manage to blind himself. He will be taken to prison and killed. General Fromm gathers von Stauffenberg, Olbrich, Mertzford, Kirchheim, Lieutenant von Heften, and others, holds an improvised court-martial, and sentences them to death, despite Hitler wanting them alive. To make an example of them, to subject them to so-called popular judgment, to make the German people understand that it is useless to rebel and that he is the Führer of Germany. The sentences are carried out by firing squad in the courtyard of the Blender block. It is said that von Stauffenberg, at the moment of the rifle volley, shouts, "Long live our sacred Germany." There is no evidence of this. What is certain is that in the days, weeks, and months that follow, the hunt for the conspirators becomes ruthless, becoming the last brutal face of the regime. A principle is applied, that of SIPRAF, which means the possibility of taking it out on the family members of those who break the rules. It's so brutal that von Stauffenberg's wife and family are sent to a concentration camp. They will be freed by the Allies at Lake Braze in Valpusteria. Almost a year later, in May 1945, Field Marshal Witzleben, Karl Goerder, Ulrich von Hassel, and many others like them are put on trial by the People's Court. A sham court with trials that last 5 minutes 8 when they go long, led by a ruthless prosecutor. The judge, Roland Freisler, who had been among the participants at the Wannsee Conference in January 1942. Von Witzleben is even brought to trial without a belt, without suspenders, forced as an old man to hold up his pants with his hands to avoid standing before the court in his underwear. They wanted to humiliate him. He and others were hanged on butcher hooks with piano wire, a barbaric act, filmed by movie cameras for a film later shown to amuse Hitler, Bormann, and top regime officials. Something truly absurd. Artur Nebi tries to escape right in the Elbe area, where today there is a base. He will be captured and executed. Count von Eldorf will also be shot. The same fate awaits General Feldgeber. Admiral Canaris will be imprisoned at Flossenburg and executed a few days before American troops managed to reach the camp in April 1945 and liberate it. As for Erich Fromm, the man whom some accuse of being a modern author of The Great Refusal, he will lose all importance in Hitler's eyes. He will be stripped of his position as head of the Territorial Army, which will instead be entrusted to Himmler, the head of the SS. And after a short period, he too will be imprisoned and eventually executed. In March 1945, bringing full circle the story of the Schwarzkapelle, of men who tried to oppose the tyrant, also to make it clear that no, not all Germans wanted Hitler, and no, not all Germans deserved a man and a regime like those of Adolf Hitler.